This is the story of coming home. My coming home, actually. This week I had to cross the border between Queensland and New South Wales twice. Here I am at the airport, and in the background there is my aeroplane. As I headed towards the aeroplane, I remembered that somebody was going to stop me, and they would say to me, "Excuse me, Mr. Lord, have you got identification?" I said, "I sure do," and I slapped down my favourite form of identification. "Not good enough," she said. "I want to see your passport." A passport is a formal document that allows me to cross borders between states and countries. I met the pilot. He was a funny looking guy, and off we went. Next day in Sydney, I worked very hard, and I had completely forgotten that later this week I would be coming home across the border. But that night, as I fell asleep, I started to get anxious. I could be running through the airport, not catching the plane, or catch the wrong plane, or get to the plane too late, or not even be able to get in. I arrived early, said to the Uber driver, "Thank you, can I have my luggage?" And then I provided my identification and went to the plane. Not that plane. That plane's a little itty bitty plane. I'm talking about I went home in a big plane. I went home in a plane that looked like the Millennium Falcon. That's right, and there was a big hairy guy in the cockpit, and as I walked into the plane, I smiled because there was lots of room. They wanted me to sit at the front. We were going home. However, as we came into land, I started to get anxious. I hadn't crossed the border into Queensland before, and there was this big dog, and he wanted to know and smell everything and everyone. I know, tough job, Teddy, tough job. There was this angry policeman. In fact, he looked a bit more like this guy. And this guy wasn't the only guy that was there at the airport. There were 3 checkpoints, and there were these guys. All of them worked for this guy. And this guy wanted to know what hotel, what food had I eaten, where had I stayed. "I find your lack of paperwork disturbing," he said. However, I finally made it to the final guy, and he said to me, "Shall not pass!" "Just joking, Mr. Lord. Welcome home." He gave me my papers, some silly coronavirus handshake, and off I went. But I was thinking, what's it like? Is this what it's like when you go to heaven? Surely you don't have all these things like passports and receipts and where you stayed and what you've done. I'm thinking it's like Tie a Yellow Ribbon story, where all the soldiers come home and they're all happy about being free. The guy who knows, though, is Woody. Woody has been rescuing toys and bringing them home for ages. I said to Woody, "How do I get this story across about coming home to heaven?" And he said, "Prodigal son." And he's right. He's right. Let's tell the story of the prodigal son. The prodigal son takes half of his father's money. He squanders it, doesn't even say thank you to his father, and heads off. He buys fast cars, crazy dinosaurs, lots of costumes, and has lots of parties. In fact, this prodigal son wastes this money, and it all runs down until it amounts to nothing. And all of those friends that he had, well, they all drifted away. Soon, he found himself without any friends, and he certainly had no high life. He was by himself. He was by himself in ancient Israel, feeding the pigs, and the pigs were fighting with him to get the food. He was so hungry, he felt like he was trapped in a prison, and he started to realize that this was not the life he planned. The pigs were better off than he was. And he started to realize that he had sinned and he needed to come back. So from his prison, he started to think and he started to pray. And he said to himself, "I believe that if I come home to my Father, that he will welcome me and treat me as least as one of his servants." And as he prayed into the afternoon and into the evening, he knew what he needed to do. He needed to get home as fast as possible. Not in the speeder, no. Not on the horse, no. He couldn't go home in the fastest car because that had been repossessed. And no, he couldn't be on the dinosaur. The dinosaur was no longer a friend. He had to walk. And it was a long journey. But he knew he needed to go home to see his father. Long way off, his father saw him and said, Kill the fatted calf. We're having a party. Get a great coat. And he raced off to see his son. And as he approached his son said, Dad, I am not good enough to be your son anymore. Rubbish. I don't need a passport. I don't need any silly paperwork. You are my son, and I am pleased that you are home. You were once dead, and now you're alive. And this is what I think it's like for those who are going to come home to heaven. Good evening.